Yep.
Welcome, everybody, to the Ann Arbor Public Power Forum, hoping to answer your questions about the question of public power for Ann Arbor. We are also joined by I'm Norm Howe from the Washtenaw County Democratic Party, joined also by Eli Nathans, who is going to help with questions, and we really want to ensure that everybody realizes that we're inviting questions. We would ask you to type them into chat. Eli will sort them and pass them on to our esteemed panelists. And also Teresa Reed, who is the chair of the WCDP. Welcome, everybody. So I'm Norm Howe. I'm the moderator for this. I don't know anything about this subject, but fortunately, all I have to do is ask questions. So that's good. I'm here to learn. And we really need to learn about this because this is a complex subject. There's lots of moving parts. There's a whole alphabet soup of different components that are related to this question that all work together, really. And it's a lot of work for voters, to be honest with you. But you know what? That's okay. That is the price of living in a democracy. There are certainly other people who would be perfectly willing to take this load off our hands and answer these questions for us. But you know what? 250 years ago, we decided to go in a different direction. So here we are. And here is our agenda for today. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to talk about just a brief review of some of these other issues that are circling around this question here. I will hope that our panelists will be able to add to and answer questions that I leave open in my brief introduction. I'm going to, of course, introduce our panelists. Each of the panelists will then talk about their subject. Yousef Rabhi will get 8 minutes. Erica Briggs will get 8 minutes in sequence. Brian Geiringer will get 15 minutes, and Robert George will get 15 minutes. Then we're going to have rebuttals, and we will sequence through the 4 panelists, 2 minutes each. There may be some questions from me after that, but we are definitely going to reserve time at the end to review questions that come from you. So you're the reason why we're doing this. So we're going to make time for that. So our panelists are Yousef Rabhi, and Yousef is past state rep for this area, and he is currently on the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. In both cases, he helped to shape energy, environmental, and infrastructure policy. He's long advocated for clean energy and for climate action and greater local control. As a candidate for mayor of Ann Arbor, he supports exploring public power as a way to improve affordability, reliability, accountability, and the transition to renewable energy. Our next panelist will be Erica Briggs. She serves on the Ann Arbor City Council. She represents Ward 5. She's serving her second term. First elected in 2020, she has served on numerous city commissions, including the Energy Commission. She brings to the council over 20 years of environmental public policy experience with nonprofit management experience as well. PhD in political science from Michigan State University and a master's in public administration from Eastern Michigan University. Brian Geiringer has been the executive director of Ann Arbor for Public Power for over 2 years. Born and raised in Ann Arbor, graduated from Huron High School, yay River Rats. He holds a master's in public science degree from the School of Environmental and Sustainability at U of M, and has been a community organizer for 10 years, including with the Huron Valley Democratic Socialists of America. Robert George is an Ann Arbor resident and supporter and member of the Ann Arbor Responsible Energy Coalition. He's been active in the community, including serving 2 years on Ann Arbor's Energy Commission. He has past experience working on state energy policy and was proud to play a small part in passing the landmark Michigan Clean Energy Future Plan in 2023. This plan requires Michigan electric utilities to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2040. So I'm just going to give, those are our panelists. I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of the other topics that are part of this conversation. Well, first of all, what is a municipally owned utility? And it is a proposal for Ann Arbor to acquire and operate DTE's electrical distribution system by eminent domain. There are 42 other publicly owned utilities in the state of Michigan, but all of them were created as public electric utilities. They were created as such. None of them have ever gone from private to public like this proposal. In 2023, there was a study of what it would take to move Ann Arbor to a public energy utility, to a municipally owned utility. And the City Council commissioned a study. It evaluated different pathways to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2030. That study was completed in 2023. The study estimated the cost of acquiring DTE's distribution assets and business in Ann Arbor. And the cost could range between $280 million and $1.15 billion. An additional $149 million would be required to connect to the transmission system. So this study also, it goes on to state that these are even more of a broader guesstimate than it appears initially, because we don't know how this would be handled in the courts. We do not know how the courts would handle the value of those assets. A phase 2 study to provide a more accurate estimate was voted on in City Council, but it was not passed. Had that study been taken up, it was estimated to cost $1.7 million to do the study. Ann Arbor has what's called a sustainable energy utility. Voters authorized the creation of this sustainable energy utility in November of 2024. It works alongside the DTE system and does not include municipalization. There, I got that out. Hey, pretty good. Residents can install solar or geothermal energy in microgrids to share between neighboring households and businesses. There's a pilot going on in the Bryant neighborhood currently, and the plan is to roll it out citywide next year. So let's go forward. I would like to ask Yousef Rabhi to speak.
Actually,
Yousef?
if I could just jump in for 1 second, Norm.
Yeah.
There's a timer which shows how much time is remaining in each speaker's first 8 minutes, then 15 minutes. When there are 30 seconds left, you're going to hear a sound like this. When time is up, you're going to hear this sound. So that's to help promote conformity with the time limits. Go ahead. Sorry to interject.
Thank you.
So I guess Yousef Rabhi.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Good evening to all. My name is Yousef Rabhi. I'm a Washtenaw County Commissioner, um, former state representative. I served in the Michigan House of Representatives for 6 years, including 4 years as Democratic floor leader. And I'm now, as well, a candidate for mayor of Ann Arbor. Very excited about that because specifically, for many reasons, but for one, I'm very passionate about this public power initiative and the conversation that we're going to happen today, that we're going to have today. I'm very excited to be part of this. So, a few things. I want to talk about how I came to be such a passionate supporter of public power. First and foremost, I want to talk about my experience in the legislature, in the front row seat to witnessing DTE's deeply corrupt hold on our political system. The fact that we do not have more accountability for DTE right now is a direct result of the fact that DTE has and continues to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on direct contributions to legislators, millions of dollars on lobbying and dark money accounts that they use to sway and influence elections, likely including the one that I'm running in right now. And this is the result of DTE wanting to control the political process because it is that same political process that regulates them. So let me give you a few examples. When I was in the state house, I introduced a bill to make it basically easier for people to install solar on their homes. This was big for me. I wanted to make it so that Ann Arborites and Michiganders as a whole could install more solar panels on their homes. And this was one of the bills that I introduced. I had the bills on my desk for co-sponsorship so that other people could sign on to become part of that bill. And what I experienced is that somebody took a picture basically of that bill and the co-sponsors, sent it to the DTE and consumers lobbyists, and I watched as my colleagues one by one walked into the hallway, were talked to by the lobbyists of DTE and consumers, walked back to my desk and crossed their names off one by one and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't sponsor this bill. I just talked to the folks in the hallway." And I watched them one by one as they did that. This is the power that DTE has to control and stop good, sustainable energy legislation from moving forward. I introduced bills to increase the distributed generation limit that they put on solar to make there's more favorable reimbursement for solar generators in the state. I introduced bills around polluter pay. I introduced bills around 100% renewable energy in the state. They killed all of those bills, and this is the power that they have. The host is muting me automatically, so hopefully.
Okay, now you're unmuted. You're okay. Sorry, there was some background noise.
Thank you. I even introduced a bill to make it so that there were automatic credits that were given to people that had power outages. I introduced a bill to make it so that people could get reimbursed for the grocery spoilage in their fridge when the power went out. I introduced bills to make it so that you would get an hourly reimbursement and that the reimbursement that you would get would increase for the length of the outage that you had. DTE killed all of these bills because of the power that they have in Lansing. We will not achieve our renewable energy goals here in Ann Arbor without full municipalization. Let me say that again. We will not achieve our renewable energy goals here in Ann Arbor with DTE as our energy provider. We are reliant on DTE, which is a dirty fossil fuel company. They own pipelines, they own natural gas plants, they own fossil fuel infrastructure all across the state. It's in the ground, and it's many of the facilities that generate our power. They're a dirty fossil fuel company, and we currently get very little energy from renewable sources. This renewable energy law that passed recently has a ton of loopholes in it, including around data centers. Data centers puncture a major loophole in the law because if it's not feasible for these utilities to transition to 100% renewable energy by the target dates, then they don't have to do it. And so when you're putting on major data centers onto the grid, that gives these utilities an out to not have to generate 100% renewable energy anymore. Our grid is not reliable. Our power keeps going out. We just had folks after 3 or 4 days in some cases just restored their power. And the reason that all of this is happening is because DTE has not invested in our grid. They have let our grid deteriorate and fall apart because they take $1 billion in profits every year and give it to their shareholders. They take millions of dollars to pay their well overpaid executives. They take millions of dollars to spend on their lobbyists and on putting money into dark money accounts to influence elections. I remember one election in 2018, they spent over $10 million in one election in dark money. That's corporate money. That's your utility rates that are being spent on influencing elections. And so we are paying our bills. My bill is multiple hundreds of dollars every month, and it's going up. They always ask for a fee increase. They always get a fee increase. It's not usually the amount that they ask for, but they always get a rate increase. So our rates keep going up. Our energy reliability keeps going down, and DTE is spending our money to basically influence legislators to reduce accountability for themselves. And the only reason that we're seeing some improvements in our grid now is because we've organized around Ann Arbor for Public Power. They have not invested in our grid up until now, and they're doing it, and they're spending our money to send letters to us saying how much work they're suddenly doing to the grid because they're afraid. They're afraid that this community will stand up and say, enough is enough. We're sick of sending our ratepayer money to Wall Street. We want it to be spent right here on Main Street, on the street that we live on, so that we have reliable power, so that we're not getting screwed over on our rates, so that we have sustainable energy. And this is the power that we can achieve when we come together and create a municipal utility. The SEU is a fine step in that right direction. It brings us one step closer to having cleaner energy, but it will never get us to 100% clean energy, renewable energy. We have to create a full muni to do that. And once we create a full muni, we can connect to the MISO grid and we can buy power from wherever we want to. We cannot do that right now as a community. It's not allowed under state law. It is not permissible. We can do it though once we create a municipal utility. Yes, it will take time. Yes, it will take work. But I have a 8-month-old at home, and I want to live in a world that he gets to grow up in, where we have public power that is green, reliable, safe, and cheap. And that future cannot be achieved with DTE running our power grid. So I want to thank you all for tuning into this issue. This is deeply personal to me because it is about the future of our community, and it's about what we will be able to do together. And if you look across this state at countless other communities that have done an excellent job of running a public municipal utility, this is more than feasible. We have clear examples of it all across Michigan. We can do this here, and we will do this here. And DTE is no longer going to be an asset to this community because they have not been an asset to this community for over a decade. So I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I will yield the balance of my time.
Actually, Norm, you're gonna have to unmute yourself. Sorry. Norm, would you unmute yourself? Great, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Yousef. So we are going to go to Erica Briggs. And Erica, I'm going to put your slides up here.
Wonderful. That's what I was hoping you were about to say.
I just need to find them. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So I would like to thank the Washtenaw County Democratic Party, my fellow panelists, and the folks who are attending tonight for caring about Ann Arbor's energy future. The great news is that I think that most of us are aligned on the goals. We want our energy to be renewable and reliable and affordable. We're just debating how we get there more responsibly. Next slide, please. So before we begin, I just wanted to share a bit more about myself. I became engaged in environmental activism in college and have devoted my career to advancing policy solutions that make our communities greener, primarily in the land use and transportation policy space. these values and my concern for good and undramatic governance have led me to run for council in 2020. I am not shy about sharing my views on many topics and have been one of the most vocal critics about DTE on council. But I also try to balance my passion and at times my indignation with a pragmatic and evidence-based approach to problem solving. Next slide, please. So with that background, I wanted to provide a little bit more background on some of the critical analysis that the city has done over the last few years to analyze our energy options and the potential structures for achieving Ann Arbor's goal of carbon neutrality by 2030. So as Norm mentioned earlier, in 2023, the city contracted with a team assembled by Five Lakes Energy to examine our possible pathways. You can see the scope of the study here. Given our time tonight, I'm going to jump right to the end of this 200-page report and give you the high-level takeaway. Just know that you can Google it and find the entire report on the city's website. The consultants recommended that the city immediately pursue development of a supplemental sustainable energy utility. Next slide, please. And so that's what we did. It was exciting. In November 2024, our community overwhelmingly supported the development of a sustainable energy utility. As Norm mentioned, this is a supplemental opt-in community-owned utility that provides 100% local renewable energy and clean energy solutions. And our model is attracting a lot of positive attention from across the nation, but I'll share more about that later. Next slide, please. So let's return to the question of the Municipal Electric Utility, or MEU. As a reminder, an MEU requires the city to be responsible for the provision of all the power to our residents and businesses, and it would require the city to purchase all of DTE's assets. And those assets don't magically become more reliable or green if the city purchases them. The cost to upgrade the infrastructure would, of course, be additional. The 2023 analysis provided an initial broad range for the cost of acquiring DTE's distribution assets, range of between $280 million to $1.15 billion, excluding substations, which we would need to build, and of course that would be more. Our consultants also made it clear that more study was necessary. Michigan law states that in order to acquire DTE's assets without their consent, the city must pay just compensation. So that first step would be to be prepared in court is to evaluation study, which in 2025, the cost was going to be $1.7 million. A big wild card that no study could answer is how the courts would determine going concern, or DTE's lost but anticipated profits. Our city attorney's office told us that we would need to budget $3 million a year for legal costs. So given these significant upfront costs, uncertainty about long-term gain, lack of federal support for clean energy under the Trump administration, and our many other pressing community priorities, I and a majority of my colleagues voted not to proceed forward with an MEU in 2025, which I think is a smart decision because we've been able to invest our time, our energy, and our resources into starting up the SCU. Next slide, please. And so while I fully share and understand the frustrations in investor-owned utilities broadly and ours specifically, I don't support this petition that is being circulated by A2P2 to amend the charter to establish a municipal electric utility, and I urge you to decline to sign it. Next slide, please. I urge you to read the proposed ordinance language thoroughly. The structure and the authority that is being established for this entirely new body should give you significant pause, even if you've been a strong supporter of the concept of a municipal electric utility. Next slide, please. And of course, I have a number of concerns. First and foremost, I believe that this proposal is ill-conceived, and it charts a course with no concern for the financial health of the city and the multitude of priorities the city must balance. It disconnects itself from the work of the sustainable energy utility, and it could easily derail our forward momentum. It creates a new governing board with powers currently vested in council, and this board is not required to have expertise, despite the highly technical nature of their work. Finally, it establishes no new funding stream to do this work. The city would need to cut services or existing programs or raise taxes to pay for evaluation study, ongoing legal services, and of course, all the other work. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, our city's attorney's office has already informed us that just the legal work is likely to be $3 million a year, and there is no certainty of any guarantee of success. DTE has every incentive to drag this process out. The fight in Boulder against Xcel Energy, their utility, cost $30 million, lasted 10 years before the city of Boulder quit the legal battle in 2020. Next slide, please. As a side note, it's interesting to see what they're doing now after they've quit their fight. They are looking at a new model for inspiration and a path forward to accomplish their goals of greater reliability and green energy. And what they're looking to is Ann Arbor's sustainable energy utility model. Next slide, please. But again, with this petition circulating, folks are becoming increasingly confused about what the SEU is and what it does. There's a great short video on the city's website that I encourage you to watch. It's optional. But again, an SEU is an optional supplemental utility, meaning SEU customers will remain connected to the existing power grid, and it is community owned. It will provide residents and businesses with 100% local, renewable, and clean energy solutions. We are focused on doing what DTE isn't, improving energy efficiency and creating new renewable energy via the installation of solar and batteries, geothermal systems, and soon microgrids. Next slide, please. You can skip this. So we are incredibly fortunate to have a powerhouse team at the helm, some truly impressive and talented women that are leading this effort. Next slide, please. But as Yousef mentioned, DTE needs to be held accountable. And as we move forward quickly with SEU, it's important to know that Ann Arbor is working hard to hold DTE accountable and make them a better regional partner for all of our neighbors. We have intervened in 11 different cases over the last 5 years, and our engagement not only helps our residents, it helps all of DTE's customers. From an equity perspective, it's important that Ann Arbor doesn't just care about ourselves. Equity and replicability are core principles of our climate action plan. Honestly, it doesn't really matter if Ann Arbor reaches our climate goals if no one else can follow our path. And we are leading the way. In 2025, Ann Arbor negotiated the first ever heating franchise in the country with a climate agreement with DTE Gas. This is the work of our incredible powerhouse team that I just showed you, and a community that believes in creating a clean energy future. Next slide. So thank you. In my final seconds, I will encourage you once again to decline to sign the petition that is circulating and to put yourself on the SEU waiting list for renewable, reliable, and affordable energy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So next we have Brian Geiringer. And Brian, I will share your slides.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Norm.
Oops.
Norm, I'm going to speak for a few minutes and then I'll start going through the slides. And those aren't them either.
Yeah. Okay.
Beautiful. All right, ready for me to go?
Yes.
All right, hello everybody, and thank you so much to Norm and Teresa and everyone at the WCDP for hosting this event and for having me and all the panelists. Thank you everyone for being here, and shout out to the dozens and dozens of Ann Arbor for Public Power volunteers who are out on the streets collecting signatures for the Public Power Ballot initiative as we speak, and to the thousands of A2P2 supporters around Ann Arbor. For all of you watching along at home, I recommend opening the A2P2 website at annarborpublicpower.org and going to the ballot initiative tab at the top. Among other things, there is an FAQ covering many of the common questions around this year's ballot initiative there. I want you all to know that this ballot initiative has been created as a joint effort between Ann Arbor for Public Power and Mr. Ross Hammersley, an expert lawyer on the topic, and the former chair of the Traverse City Light and Power Board, which is the public power board in Traverse City, analogous to the one we are creating with this year's ballot initiative. Before I go into more details about the plan for Ann Arbor to make its electric grid work for the people rather than for shareholders, I want to briefly touch on the tactics of our opponents, who have been spreading massive amounts of disinformation around the city, backed by at least $1.8 million from DTE, and backed by a DTE study that happened to arrive at the exact conclusion that is convenient for DTE's narrative and their scare tactics. It's true that this process we are undertaking has many steps, and at the same time, it is incredibly simple. It is a question of whether we as a city value profits over people or people over profits. Our opponents are going to try to scare you in any way they can. They are going to try to make this process seem incredibly complicated, expensive, terrifying. But at the end of the day, there are simply two questions we need to be asking ourselves. Number one, has DTE done a good job with the monopoly that they have been granted? And do we trust them for the decades to come? And number two, can the city do a better job? I personally think the answer to question one is very obvious. DTE has completely lost the trust of the people of Ann Arbor and Southeast Michigan. They have some of the highest rates, least reliable service, and dirtiest electricity in the nation, and it is no secret why. It's because they send as much of our money to shareholders as possible. 16% of every electric bill you pay goes to Wall Street shareholders, and more of it goes to buy our politicians. More of it goes toward giant corporate executive salaries, and more of it goes for greenwashing their fossil fuel endeavors. They are doing all of this while they destroy the environment. As Yousef says, they are a fossil fuel company first and foremost, and they have no legal obligation to you and me, only to their shareholders. The answer to the second question, whether Ann Arbor can do it better, is the one that we will be discussing as a city for the coming years. All evidence points to an emphatic yes, we can do it better. Every single public electric utility in the Lower Peninsula is more reliable than DTE, and residents pay less. In Chelsea, right next door, they have public power. They pay 2/3 of what we do, and their power goes out 1/3 or 1/4 of what ours does. And again, it's not rocket science. It's because their electric bills go into improving the grid, and our electric bills go to lining the pockets of shareholders. So, despite all these bells and whistles that will be sort of wheeled out to scare us, at the end of the day, there will be a summary cost to acquire DTE's assets, everything included. Once we know that cost, we will be able to say with confidence just how massive the benefits of this change will be to residents and how much you and I will save over the decades and even potentially on day one. So to give people an example, Clearwater, Florida just underwent this exact process. They went through a independent, unbiased feasibility study to evaluate the acquisition cost. Clearwater is a town of 115,000 residents, just like Ann Arbor, very similar. Their utility said that an acquisition would cost the town $1 billion. Does that sound familiar? They just did this study and they found that no, the price of the assets is $265 million. And everything included, Clearwater residents are going to save over 10% on their bills on day one. Not to mention the gigantic benefits to reliability, to the environment, and to local control to have influence over things like whether we provide electricity to data centers or not. So again, our opponents are going to try to scare you. At the end of the day, the question is whether DT is doing a good job and whether Ann Arbor can do it better. People or profits. But there is something I want to emphasize to you. The Public Power Board that we are creating with the current ballot initiative will not have the ability to seize DTE's assets. It will not have the power to use the city's money, and it will not touch the sustainable energy utility. There is virtually no risk of going forward with creating a Public Power Board, despite what our opponents will try to convince you of. So we know the answer to question one, DTE is doing a poor job. And we can safely move forward with this year's ballot initiative to create a Public Power Board while we answer question two, whether Ann Arbor can do it better. Okay, thanks, Norm. Next slide here. So what is Ann Arbor for Public Power? Next slide. It's a nonprofit, which there's also now a ballot question committee associated with it. It's a local movement org. There's dozens and dozens of dedicated volunteers. So far, we've had about 100 different people, 100 different volunteers collect signatures for our ballot initiative. It is in coalition with a lot of other groups. And the primary goal is to educate and advocate for Ann Arbor to run its electricity rather than DTE. Next slide. So what does it have to offer? Next slide. Number one is keeping the lights on. Next slide. We all just experienced yet another example where we see that 20-minute storm, it was a significant storm, but we have an easy side-by-side comparison. We saw how quickly Chelsea got their power back. We saw how quickly Wyandotte got their power back. People in those cities are celebrating their public electric utilities, and it's because their money goes to investing in the grid rather than shareholders. Okay, next slide. Next thing is affordability. Next slide. DT, so private power across the country is more expensive than public power, but DT is even more expensive than that. Next slide. The third thing is climate impact. Next slide. So the really important thing to know, not only is DT one of the most, one of the dirtiest electric utilities in the nation, but what we will gain when we have the power of, or sorry, what the city will gain when it takes over the electric utility. Not only can we choose to buy renewably generated electrons, which is great because it makes an incentive force on the market, but the true dream is that the city can then enter what are called power purchase agreements with renewable energy generation companies and basically tell them that if you create this much renewable generation over the next decade or two, the city will buy all of it or will buy some of it. So we can actually incentivize the entire creation of new renewable energy generation that puts the true dent on the climate catastrophe that we're undergoing. Next slide, Norm. Thank you. 6 cities in the US have already achieved 100% renewable power. Guess what's the one thing that they all have? They all have public power. That's what it is. Appreciate it. Next slide. Next slide. So I'm not going to go into this too much. It's really a question of whether the city runs the utility or whether it is a private for-profit utility that is powered by shareholders. I would encourage people to think about how your water is provisioned right now. We have a public water utility in the city of Ann Arbor, and the water's great. You never even think about your water. It obviously never goes out. It's all good. In many other places in the country, people have public power, and if you ask them how their electricity is, they say, "What are you talking about? What do you mean, how is my electricity?" The same way we think about our water, because it just never goes out. It's not an issue. Or if it does, on average, public power outages are out for 2 hours at the very most throughout the whole year, and it happens like 1.1 times a year in public power utilities. Okay, next slide. It is legal in Michigan. It's legal in Ann Arbor. We have the explicit right to do so. Next slide. Next slide. We also have local control, like I said, over things like data centers, also setting rates, also where we purchase our electricity, also entering into power purchase agreements, like I said. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Sorry, Norm. I warned you about this. There are some really big success stories. Next slide. One of the biggest ones in the country recently has been Winter Park, Florida. Winter Park is in a place with hurricanes, and not only did they manage to buy their utility, put over 90% of their lines underground in 15 years or so, but they did all of this without utility rates going up a cent. And in fact, they pay much less than they did despite all the extra infrastructure that they were able to build. Couple more slides. One, two. Give me another. So how do we get to public power? Next slide. Here's the roadmap. We're going to go into this more, I think, in the future, but we're putting forward a ballot proposal now to create a board. We will need a second feasibility study after that. There does have to be a court case to determine the actual cost. This is going to be similar to if you buy a house and there are some costs associated with buying a house. That doesn't mean it's not worth it. And then the vote to acquire DTE's assets will only happen once we know the cost. Okay, next few slides. Keep going. Thank you. Keep going. Keep going. That's the next one. So what does this ballot initiative do? It creates the public power utility on paper, similar to what happened with the SEU. But it is important to note that DTE retains the monopoly as it has it now. So this is not as though it's not going to create a utility that is all of a sudden knocking on your door asking to provide you energy or something like that. The creation of the actual utility is mostly a placeholder for the board to exist. Next slide. This is the big one here. So what this initiative does is it creates a public power utility board that would be seated in 2028. That board is not scary. It is actually just modeled after the other public power boards all over the state. It has actually fewer powers than most of those other ones, in particular because council has been given veto power on their decision making. But the one unique thing we did two unique things here. One is that we decided that this board should be a hybrid elected and appointed board. So, keep on that one. Thank you. So there will be, no, back one, please. Thank you. So 5 of those seats on that board will be elected, 1 for each ward. And then after that election, 4 of those seats will be appointed by council. The reason for this is that we want a majority democratically elected board. So 5 of the 9 will be democratically elected, but there can be issues with a entirely democratically elected board because you might want, for instance, somebody who is an expert in electricity transmission. So the fact that council is able to appoint the latter 4 seats ensures that everyone who needs to be there is there. And then one of those 4 appointed seats will be reserved for labor. And last slide. The other thing it does is it makes it clear that the board should be striving for a just transition for workers and also ending reliance on fossil fuels. It doesn't touch the sustainable energy utility, and it also gives council an 8-vote veto. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Robert George.
And Robert, you're gonna have to unmute.
Awesome. Ready when you are, Norm.
Yeah, I am. I had your slides up before, I promise you, Robert, and then they disappeared.
He can just do my slides if that is easier.
Thanks for the help.
Awesome. Thank you, Norm. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with everyone tonight about this pressing issue before Ann Arbor residents. My name is Robert George. I am a member and supporter of the Ann Arbor Responsible Energy Coalition. I had the opportunity to serve 2 years on the city's Energy Commission when I first moved here, and was able to go through many of these same presentations and hear from many of the folks engaged in this topic, and was also I was a supporter of the proposal that came from the Energy Commission that went to City Council to suggest the first feasibility study in phase 1 that the City Council did do. So I had the opportunity to really work through this issue. Additionally, being able to work on state energy policy and fight for and help get the clean energy plan passed under the Democratic trifecta was something I view with immense pride and also view as something that aligns with our goals in the city of Ann Arbor. So anyways, about our Responsible Energy Coalition, as folks can see on our screen, we have we just breached 1,500 total supporters here in the city. These are folks that have joined via our website or been canvassed and are indicating that they're supportive of our coalition. We have a number of building trade unions across the trade sectors. And we are the official voice of the No campaign, set up as a ballot question committee, completely separate from any other entity, including DTE. DTE was a financial contributor to the coalition, as folks know, but the coalition here is operating completely separate from any other outside entities and is real Ann Arbor residents supporting it. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just again, to go in a little bit about what the actual petition does here. This language here that will be potentially on the ballot in November would create this municipal electric utility board. This is a charter amendment and would be permanently placed in our charter. When we're talking about this issue of what this board actually does, it's quite a powerful board, as referred to earlier. It will have, it would take a supermajority of city council to override its decisions. And if for some reason that this path does not fully yield the outcome that it could yield, for instance, if the vote in 2028 were to fail, or if council were to abandon this effort, that this board would forever be in our charter until it would be repealed. And that's something that I think that folks don't talk enough about. There is real risk about starting this process, and that this is permanently in our charter if it were to pass. And what that means, that we could have a potential zombie board going forward. So there is risk in creating the board. Next slide, please. Who would run it? As was mentioned earlier, the 9 total board seats, 5 elected, 4 appointed. At the end of the day, the requirement, or the lack of requirement for anyone to have experience in utility past work experience there is a pretty glaring spot here. And as we've talked about the SEU and the individuals that have been running not only that, but our overall efforts to decarbonize in our sustainability department from the city's perspective, there's been a lot of criticism of those folks, and even the individual that's running the SEU, just because of her past utility experience. And it seems that there's almost a opposition to experience in actually running a real utility with what we've got right now. And as we look to go forward, that is something that really should be considered in this proposal. Next slide, please. When we're talking about what our pure examples could be here, as been noted, it's never been done in Michigan for what is being proposed here. The systems that have been referenced, like Lansing and Holland and Chelsea, were all set up independently at the beginning when electric utilities were first being set up in the early 1900s. It hasn't been done in about 100 years here in Michigan, and so far as a new utility being set up like this. And so, it's important to keep that in consideration, that what this process going through and actually seizing assets, seizing all of the logistical complications of that and going through the legal process is substantially more than what is initially talked about when we're just talking about buying assets. And as noted, before, Boulder, Colorado's example, that they went through a decade of this fight and had $30 million in legal costs and abandoned the effort. I was on the Energy Commission when the mayor of Boulder joined our call and advocated that we should not go down this path. And his words were pretty persuasive to me at the time. And so I think that's, that type of experience of another peer city. And as you can see, the number of times that it's been attempted across the country, only about an 8% success rate. Next slide. Looking at actually what this, if we were to fully flesh this out and what this actually could mean in its totality, running a grid is very complex. And I just want to pull out a few items here that are listed. Mutual aid agreements, as noted earlier, we do have severe weather. We had severe weather recently and lose power. Our existing utility has substantial agreements with other utilities across the country to be able to bring in additional resources, bring in additional manpower, bring in additional entities to be able to get the power back on as quickly as possible. And those types of agreements would take years to negotiate in a new utility. And also, while smaller utilities, municipally owned utilities do have similar agreements, they're much smaller. They have far less resources to draw off of. And so when we're talking about being able to maximize the amount of resources that can be brought into Ann Arbor, this is a key component to be considered when we're talking about starting up our own grid. Looking at buying the electricity. Ann Arbor's not going to be generating all of its own electricity. We're going to have to go out into the open market. And yes, that we can demand to buy as much clean energy as possible. But a lot of that energy is going to have to be bought from existing utility entities in the state or in the region. And that's just because there's only so many producers of electricity. Yes, Ann Arbor can attempt to try and build new physical infrastructure, but that is a years-long process to be able to get all the approvals and permits. And also the big rush right now to build out renewable energy has put a real crunch on the supply chain for renewable energy components. And so that's another thing to keep in mind when we're talking about actually buying the electricity, that we may end up still buying the electricity from DTE like we have right now. And when we're talking about running the business itself, there's the aspect of establishing, again, a lot of that physical infrastructure. We're going to have neighborhood power stations built on. We do have some substations in the city, but a good amount of that electrical infrastructure is not within the city's borders. So the city would have to build new infrastructure. And there's not a lot of vacant land here in the city to be able to take and to be able to put in for an electrical grid. So that means that we might have to take housing stock off of the grid, off of the existing housing market to be able to to allocate the land for this new electrical infrastructure. And so again, as we're looking at what does this mean? There's a lot of uncertainty insofar as actually what does it mean for the city to run a full grid. Next slide, please. And then we get to the cost of all of this. Now you've heard a couple of different ranges on the cost estimate here. The CRA study from 2025 had $1 billion price tag on it. And from the director of sustainability from the city, that doesn't surprise her. And that these cost estimates, there's a lot of overlap between the initial study that the city did and this independent study that was conducted. In the hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially up to $1 billion. And as folks know, inflation hasn't stopped. It's only going to get more expensive. And as we've seen a huge uptick in costs in the construction industry, both between manpower shortages as well as material shortages. So again, the city study that was done several years ago, again, it probably underestimated the total cost just because of the inflation costs of the last few years alone. And then we get to how are we going to have to pay for this? And so the main ways that folks can look at paying for this huge price tag is there's going to have to be a new millage, there's going to be electrical rate hikes, or there's going to have to do bonding through the city's bonding capacity. And so, to service this existing debt, you're talking about a 30 to 40% rate hike almost immediately, depending on what the type of electrical energy source is. And these are real costs. And we're talking about real cited studies here that there's not only the uncertainty there, but that there's a high uncertainty that there's a negative outcome here financially. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to break down the costs a little bit here. And so these numbers here on your screen are from the CRA study. A lot of the conversation is about the fair market value of what the assets are, right? And that will be quibbled over and was noted, will be adjudicated out in court. However, there's a lot of other things beyond just the costs of the infrastructure itself. Currently, there's been about $300 million being invested into our grid right now. Started last year, will continue through 2028. That adds into the total existing value of the infrastructure because that increases the value of it. You've got the disconnecting from our regional partners there in the grid separation. So that's a lot of the substation build out and furthermore the infrastructure build out. Making sure that when ripping Ann Arbor out of the system, that other customers that rely as Ann Arbor as part of this overall system in Washtenaw County, for example, are still going to be able to be made whole. Ripping out a very wealthy aspect from the grid deprives the grid of a substantial revenue to help support other areas of the grid. And that's not very equitable. As we're talking about, one of the values of Democrats is that we try and lift everyone up and we do it together as a team. This isn't very team-centric or equity-centric either. And just as another additional note on the aspect of bonding, we're not able to use tax-exempt municipal bonds to bond out for this infrastructure, meaning that we're going to have to pay it for a more expensive type of bond, again, raising the overall costs of this proposed takeover. Next slide, please. As folks know, as another way, we already have very high property taxes in Ann Arbor, as you can see in the graphs here. And as a, the item of where is this money going to come from, regardless of what the number is, the money's going to have to come from somewhere, whether that's through bonding, through a new millage, through higher property taxes, or through increased electrical rates. But you got to pay for it somehow. Next slide, please. And then when we're talking about our clean energy goals here, as noted by Councilmember Briggs, the amount of progress that has been made by the SEU, that all of this is being done right now without new debt for the city of Ann Arbor. There is not ongoing litigation over the legality of the SEU. There's not fights going out. There's not uncertainty created in the, deciding whether folks should live here. Thank you. Should be living here because of a variable electrical cost, or whether businesses are going to invest in Ann Arbor. We have certainty, and certainty is something that is very important nowadays from lots of different perspectives, and that's what the SEU can help deliver. And just as a note, as noted, that the state's clean energy law requires all electric utilities to be at 100% clean and carbon-free energy by 2040. And when we're talking about the timeline here, in the studies, both from the city and the CRA study, they gave ranges of roughly 7 to 14 years to complete this whole process. And if folks look and see, it's 2026 currently, 14 years puts you exactly at 2040. We'll be at 100% clean and carbon-free energy by 2040. And, it was noted that there are loopholes and opt-outs from the law. None of the utilities that are regulated by the Michigan Public Service Commission have taken advantage of any sort of opt-out of the current standards that are in place under the law right now. And so, again, when we're talking about fear-mongering, we want to talk about facts. And right now, that's the law of the land. There have not been any opt-outs. And that is where we're headed. We're headed to 100% clean and carbon-free energy by 2040 without $1 billion in debt. Next slide. And just to kind of wrap up here, looking at what to leave you with here, looking at the track record here, 8% success rate nationally. It's been never been done in Michigan the way it's being proposed right now. Huge ranges of cost here of what it means for both the city and everyday consumers of electricity. There's a real cost to this, and hundreds of millions, potentially up to $1 billion with real rate hikes, real potential property tax increases. You got to pay for it somehow. The complexity, the city is going to have to start up a whole number of things. It could still end up buying electricity on the open market from DTE, where DTE will have a huge impact on setting what that rate is that the city could purchase from. All of that for still exactly where we started, with serious implications for our city's push to net zero and making sure the SEU is functioning appropriately. And once again, I appreciate everyone's time. I look forward to the questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. So we'll go to rebuttals now, and Yousef, what do you got to say?
Awesome. 2 minutes, right?
Yep.
All right. So thank you all for, to my fellow panelists for the presentations. I just want to, I guess, mention that especially in the last presentation, there was a lot of fear-mongering and misinformation that was shared with all of you in that slideshow. One of the things I want to remind folks is we are already paying the freight to fund our utility here in Ann Arbor. We are not proposing, nobody's proposing to increase taxes. There is a law called the Revenue Bonding Act that allows municipalities to borrow and finance those bonds using a revenue source, in this case, rates. So, that is what's being talked about right now. The other thing is, it was mentioned, like, we have a lot of certainty right now. We do have a lot of certainty that our power will go out all the time, a lot of certainty that we'll pay really high rates, a lot of certainty that DTE is a racist company because they garnish people's wages to collect on unpaid bills, a lot of certainty that we're not going to have renewable energy. And by the way, the renewable energy law that was passed that pushes us towards 100% note what he said. He said renewable and carbon free. One of those carbon free options being nuclear. So the state could move, more to nuclear, and it allows for methane, natural gas power plants, as long as a certain percentage of the natural gas emissions are recaptured, but it does not have to be 100%. And that can count towards that goal. In addition, he said nobody's taken advantage of the opt out yet. That's because a lot of these data centers haven't hit the pipeline yet. And they're about to come online, and they're about to suck up a lot of power from the grid, and they're going to opt out from that standard.
Okay, thank you. Erica.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to all. I think we can just all start with the starting place that we don't like DTE. We don't like their practices. They're dirty, one of the dirtiest utilities in the country and least reliable. That's all fact. The question is, what's our next step? And this is one of the pieces that, we wrestled with on Energy Commission and on Council, about how we get there. And what we did is we listened to other places that had been there before us and had done this. So Brian mentioned the example of Winter Park as a great example. Sounded great, except they had a franchise agreement that expired. They didn't have to go through this legal fight, and they also weren't trying to have green energy, right? They were just working on reliability. So it's not a great example. Boulder, um, uh, as I mentioned multiple times, spent 10 years, $30 million in legal fees and stopped. And so that's what we're faced with. That's the reality. I love the excitement and the energy around this. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have to work with evidence. I have to work with the fact that we need to be financially responsible. The biggest concern in our community is community affordability right now. And the suggestion that we can do all of this without additional revenue and not cutting services, and not cutting programs, that's not reality. So what we've figured out is a different pathway forward. And that's why Boulder's looking our direction now. The sustainable energy utility allows us to take those steps, but not have to worry about making DTE's lawyers richer in the process, right? So we are taking practical steps forward to try to solve these problems.
Again, thank you very much. Brian?
Yes, thank you all. There's so much to respond to here. The first thing I think I want to say is just that, directly in response to Councilmember Briggs, the idea that we're going to, that we'll have to take out loans or whatever it is. I just hope people understand that we are sending $30 million to DTE shareholders alone, not to mention all these other costs to greenwashing, to buying out our politicians, to all these things. $30 million a year just like that. So that is money that we will just immediately have access to. That's number one. People keep bringing up Boulder, and it has been a tactic of our opponents to bring up these places where it hasn't succeeded and just bring them up and say, look, they didn't succeed. That's it. But the story is actually much different than what is being portrayed here. For instance, Mr. Joerg and Councilmember Briggs were both in the October 22nd, 2021 Energy Commission meeting when Mr. Robert Cohn from Boulder, he was the sustainability manager of Boulder, he came and presented, and he said this: make no mistake, I am not telling a cautionary tale. We did make mistakes, and you can learn from those mistakes. I get asked this question a lot. Was it worth it? Would you do it all over again? And my answer every single time is emphatically yes. And the reason is that Boulder reached an agreement with their incumbent utility, Xcel, that created a path to approach the city's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030, which was their main goal. So behind, I want people to see that these incumbent investor-owned utilities have an immense amount of power. And unless we put it on the table that we can actually run the grid instead of them, they will continue to walk all over us. And when we take that power, they actually, then we can negotiate.
Okay, thank you again. Robert?
Thank you very much, Ron. Once again, I appreciate the time to chat with everybody and hopefully answer some questions here. Thank you to the fellow panelists. I think that I do want to note, I appreciate the activism and the energy behind this issue. And there's been a lot of movement. There's been wins, real wins. The SCU in of itself is a win towards this goal of net zero and more community control. Let's take that win. And as we're talking about continued progress and continued pressure to try and achieve the things that we really want as a city, as a community, getting $290 million worth of grid infrastructure investments, starting last year up through 2028, that's real progress. That's a huge win. And all of these things are being accomplished without the risk and uncertainty of $1 billion, potentially up to $1 billion of debt and 10, years upon years of litigation. And I think that's what I would like us to have folks take away. I encourage you to read the city's phase 1 study. I encourage you to read the CRA study from last year. I encourage folks to be as educated as possible. Dig into the facts. Read these studies yourself and evaluate for yourself if you think that what is being discussed here is really fear-mongering or fear tactics, or is actually close to reality and close to the facts. I encourage you to do that. And again, I think it's sometimes as progressive movement, we lose sight on the wins that we've gotten and the progress that we've made without necessarily the trade-offs and costs of some of these grander visions and grander goals. Let's take the progress that we've gotten with the SCU and the clean energy that's coming from that, the community control with that, and the investments that we're going to get and we're already getting from the existing utility, and take the wins there without the risk and uncertainty of this proposal that's before us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the moderator does have one question, if I could. And I would encourage everybody to actually read the proposal, read the text of the proposal. And this has been alluded to, but I just want to make sure that I understand exactly how this is written here. The proposal amends section 15.11B of the city charter. And the proposal sets up a board, as we said, and it's interesting here that the board then has the ability to appoint and employ an executive director who should be qualified, et cetera, et cetera. And it appears, and I would like to ask both Yousef and Brian about this. It appears that it sets up a situation where we could have a division in the city government, because operational decisions of the board, including personnel, the board appears to be independent. Am I reading this wrong? But then it could be overridden by city council, but it takes 8 affirmative votes on the part of the city council to do that. And it appears to me that this sets up a situation where there could be an impasse between city council and this new board. So what am I missing here?
Yeah, I can answer that unless you want to, Yousef.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So,
By the way, one minute, Brian.
oh shoot. Okay. So just like many aspects of the current city government, there is some independence here. I want to reiterate that this is just how every public power board already works. It is not some new big scary thing. So the board would not have any hiring power without money allocation from city council, because that's already in the charter. That's number one. And then the question about sort of like, how does this 8 affirmative vote thing work? Basically, the writers of this gave the city council some veto power just to ensure against some of these fears that, like, what if there was a rogue board? Well, we built this in to ensure that that is impossible. If the board was trying to do something utterly ridiculous, unlike anything that's ever happened anywhere else in the state, but if it happened to happen here, the council could veto it.
Okay, thank you. So next, I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience.
Actually, Norm, Erica Briggs has raised her hand. I think she'd like to respond to the question you just posed.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. So I think it's important to look at one of the reasons I highlighted these pieces around shall. It's really important to think about what oversight looks like. Remember, none of these boards have been set up since 100 years, so really different pattern. But and I understand that folks are looking at a council right now that's well governed and has a lot of policy alignment. But historically, councils often have a lot of policy divisions amongst them, and so getting up to 8 votes could be kind of challenging. Even for a situation where you can see a place going a little rogue. But there is a lot of power that's granted in this. Currently, council has authority over 2 positions. That is the city administrator and the city attorney. This is setting up an independent board that has the ability to let contracts. You can even see the board shall recommend and council shall authorize the borrowing of the money. Some of this language is not really very clear in terms of where it plays out, how it plays out.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to throw it open to questions from the audience.
So
Eli?
I've been reading through the chat. I think there must be about 30 questions in there, and I don't have time to ask all of them. So I've compressed a few together. I've got one for Robert George. Is part of your salary being paid by DTE?
So I will be very honest with folks on this. There is no involvement with DTE and the running of this coalition. They made a one-time financial contribution to the ballot question committee, and the folks running the ballot question committee are, again, completely independent of DTE. So no, the answer is no. I appreciate the question, and I think once again I just reinforce that when we're talking about this issue, we should be talking about what is actually going to be on the ballot and the consequences of that, more so than the parameters of some of these things that folks are raising here.
Well, but for DTE, you would not be paid.
Okay, I'm going to ask the questions based on the chat. So the question from Mike Nowak: how will we be able to reach 820 goals if we only have the SCU? And this is directed to all the panelists. And I guess we might as well go in the order in which people have spoken before. So starting with Yousef Rabhi, then Erica Briggs, and then Brian, and then Robert. You don't have to answer, but if you wish to answer that question, how can we get to 820 if the SCU is our only vehicle? Yousef.
The answer to that question is we can't. It's a great step in the right direction. I've said this for a long time now. I'm glad that we're pursuing the SCU in the interim of going towards a full municipal utility, because it will take a little bit of time to secure the full municipal utility. And in the interim, we are building out, renewable energy infrastructure here in Ann Arbor. I think that's fantastic. And it gets us part of the way there, but it does not get us all the way there. The only way to achieve 100% renewable energy is to create a municipal utility.
Thank you. Erica Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. I think we have to be realistic about what the timelines look like here. The reality is that it would take, if this is successful, decades to set up an MEU. It's not clear what the timeline is. Let's just say that that's not a timeline for reaching our 2030 goals. So maybe not a timeline for reaching 2035, 2040. It's unclear. What we're trying to do is to say, okay, what does our mix look like? We know what DTE is now required by law to do. We know what their standards are. Public Act 235 establishes renewable energy standard of 50% by 2030, 60 by 2035, and upwards from there. We then have the ability to figure out, okay, what can the sustainable energy utility fill in that gap? And to be moving forward on this, to be essentially filling in what DT is not filling in the meantime.
Thank you. Brian, would you like to add to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the SEU is great. It's building renewable energy creation. That's amazing. Um, my peers are going to live in a world that we are not going to recognize. And it's going to happen this year. We have an El Nino event that is utterly unlike anything in human history. This is no time for um, baby steps. We need to do everything we can. As Naomi Klein says, we have to take a warlike stance against climate change. The SU predicts being able to produce 10 to 15% of the city's energy in a decade. That is also the amount that the city's energy demand will go up in a decade. That's not enough. It's great. It's not enough. And it is unacceptable to leave the majority of Ann Arborites with no defense against DTE, as we see they're going to become increasingly less competent as these extreme climate events accelerate.
Thank you. Robert George, do you want to add anything to that
Yeah,
question?
just briefly, again, reiterating Councilmember Briggs's point, by 2030, which is the 820 goal, under state law, all electric utilities are required to have 50% of their electricity generated from clean and renewable sources. And within that, I know folks have raised a couple of times about other add-ons to the grid. The earliest that any of the data centers of the hyperscalers being turned on is at least a couple of years away, if not several years away. So again, as we're talking about trying to get there as close as possible, what the SCU can augment, getting that the 50% is already going to be there, it is much more attainable. And with what is on the offer here, and as noted in the academic studies, that this process to get to an MEU, again, 7 to 14 years, and then beyond that, having to build out all of that renewable energy generation, is going to be years upon that as well. So.
Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from Alex Lowe. Why are we thinking of buying DTE's equipment, which he describes as decrepit, and not just engaging in a new build if we want to create a municipal utility? So this, again, I'll start with Yousef, Rabhi.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, the infrastructure that is there is the infrastructure that will allow us to provide the power on day one, and it will allow us to, furnish power to people in our community once we purchase the assets. I'm totally open to the idea of building, new grid capacity, or maybe we look at undergrounding some of the lines, upgrading some of the infrastructure. I think that's totally makes sense. I think that's a great idea. But unfortunately, they have a franchise in this community that we have to take over, or else we won't be able to provide power to everybody in the community. The SCU, like Brian said, is envisioning providing power to some people, but cannot provide power to everybody in the city. The only way to do that is to fully municipalize, and it also allows us to buy energy from the grid from renewable sources.
Thank you. Erica Briggs, do you have any response to that question?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, right? You get to the end of this process, this long legal process that DTE is going to stretch out as long as they possibly can, and they have every reason to do so, to make us spend $3 million a year for as long as they can. But if the end of this, we then get DTE's infrastructure as it is, right? It's not more reliable. We have to build in greater reliability into that after that. And it's still not green. So that's why we have taken a different path. We recognize that there are significant problems. We're pushing DTE to be more accountable. We're taking those legal money and we're making sure that we do something that's actually improving the system holistically for the region. And then we're also investing in the SCU to make sure that we actually, in the meantime, have reliable green power.
Thank you. Brian Geiringer?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to note quickly that there is a legal cap on the the legal process has a 3-year cap, just to put that out there. That's one thing, but I like to use the analogy of a house. This is a great question. So let's say that you are a renter in a house and your landlord is neglecting your house. They're not doing the repairs that are needed. This is very similar to the position we're in with DTE. DTE is not repairing our house. And then the question is, okay, well, this is the only house you can ever live in, let's say. So what do you do? Do you go through even the hard steps to purchase that house from your landlord, if you have the legal right to do so? Do you tear down the house and build a new one? In almost every case, it is going to be to your immense benefit to buy your house and to start repairing it, not to try to completely scrap it and build it up from brick one.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to follow up on one question, one point you raised. You said there's going to be a 3-year cap on litigation. Is that what you meant?
That's right. Yeah. So the litigation there's a 18 to 24 month time limit on the process by which DT and the city find a price to settle on for the acquisition. And then if they so choose, there's a 1-year additional what's it called? A challenge that they can do to a higher court. And after that, it has to be settled.
I guess where is that stated? Because that's not how lawsuits usually work. Is there some special law that governs this kind of case?
I'll find it and put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. Okay, Robert George.
Thank you, Eli. Again, just kind of as stated earlier, that there is the state laws that require franchise purchasing and so forth. There's a lot of state requirements here on why the infrastructure would have to be purchased. And again, we're getting back to the cost of this. And again, there is a real cost here. It's noted that we've got almost $300 million worth of upgrades coming. That is a substantial amount of upgrades and improvements to the system. And regardless of the infrastructure evaluation period, the timeline there, I know that's been mentioned there. But insofar as what number that actually ends up at, if it's 150, it's 250, 350, you're still getting close to $500 million right there in of itself. You're half the way there to the $1 billion that folks say is a fear-mongering number. And again, how are we going to pay for this? And again, centering it back to what's on the ballot, we are getting a lot of infrastructure that isn't in the greatest condition, even with the substantial investments. It was mentioned about undergrounding and building new equipment and building new power generation. That all costs money. Undergrounding is a very expensive process. And again, whether it's going to be from the cutting existing services or whether it's going to have to be from new rates being increased or with new property taxes, there's a real cost here about what this could actually mean when taking that infrastructure over.
Thank you. This is the last question, since we're about near the end of our time. This is from Holly. How many people would be hired by the new municipal power company? Since we know that DTE has quite a few employees and they're needed when there are weather emergencies on a regular basis. So again, just rough ballpark figure, whoever cares to chime in. So Yousef, Rabhi, would you care to start with that?
I don't really have a number to share. I don't know if Brian has more to share on that. I think you would have to determine what the need is and see, and hire from there. I don't have an exact number though.
Okay, thank you. Erica Briggs, do you want to have anything to say on that one?
Yeah, I think this is all information that we don't know that goes into whether or not the long-term viability of this actually results in like an affordable system for us. And so, what's in front of us as a council or as a community right now is establishing an MEU and a governing board. This isn't a step to explore and get that valuation study. That's not what we're doing right now. It's a setting up the MEU and going down that path. And we don't have the numbers to do that, right? Our 2023 study, when you look into it, you can see the MEU 20-year financial outcomes. Some of them look good, some of them don't look good. The numbers really matter about whether this is affordable or not. And a lot of that's unknown and it gets decided in the courts. And this isn't a scare tactic. This is reality. These are the decisions that we're forced to pay attention to on council. We have a budget. It needs to be balanced. If it's not, we have to cut services, right? And so when there are all these unknowns that we don't, we need information before proceeding forward.
Thank you. Brian Geiringer, sorry.
I want to thank you all so much for being here today and for having us. So yeah, I'm gonna turn this question around a little bit, and I want to remind people that every time you pay DTE, you are not only paying for the cost of the fuel, the fossil fuels they're burning. You're not only paying for the cost it took to build that generation plant. You're also already paying for all the workers to keep everything running. We pay for that. And then with DTE, we also pay an additional 16% to shareholders. We also pay an additional amount so that they can buy our politicians. We pay an additional amount for all these things. So when you pay the new public power utility that's going to exist in Ann Arbor, hopefully around 2032, it is the same setup. Your money is going to pay for the amount of workers it's going to take, and increasing reliability, and also getting renewable generation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Robert George.
Thank you very much, Eli. And to your direct question about the workforce, I don't have an answer on the number, but I will say it's pretty indicative of where the workers who actually do this work to maintain the electrical infrastructure and operate it and deliver us power are standing on this issue. Near categorically, they are opposed to this issue, this takeover. And there are a few reasons why for that. One, that folks should know that because the existing utility DTE is a public-private entity, that they have more negotiating rights and they have more negotiating power under state law than they would have under a entirely publicly owned utility. So they have more negotiating power at the bargaining table under the current private-public setup that exists right now. So that's a huge aspect, negotiation and worker power, the decrease in worker power under this proposal. Secondly, when we're talking about actually funding or getting these workers, they gave an example recently about shortages in Wyandotte because workers will be paid less under this municipally owned utility. And we've got numerous statements to support this from workers across the area than they would be making right now. So it would be a reduction in worker power and a pay cut for the workers doing this critical work.
Thank you. That is all the time we have for our questions. I just would like to turn the meeting now back to Norm if he has any final comments.
Thanks, Eli. Great job. And also a great job to our panelists and really great questions coming from the audience too. I hope everybody has been taking notes on this. Your first exam will be on August 4th at the primary. And all these questions will be on the exam, yes. So I think that's it for tonight. And we've got an awful lot of information to digest. Terrific presentations by our expert panel. Thank you very much.
I want to add thank you to Norm and Eli for making this happen in a short period of time. It's a really critical window. So thank you so much for all of your work doing this as volunteers. The video from this session will be up on our website in a couple of days and easily accessible to everyone. And I assume I can get the slides from everyone. Well, we have the slides from everyone and get permission to post those slides along with the video. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our presenters for taking the time out on this beautiful summer evening to educate us. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all so
Thanks.
much.
Good night.
Night.